Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Leaders Organization. We help meaning-driven business leaders succeed by providing executive education programs, conferences, consulting, and peer advisory groups. Through our events, we impact hundreds of thousands of people. We offer leadership training and development as one of the top organizations in our field. The ELO Oxford Leadership Program is a one-week transformative learning experience for Christian business leaders offered at one of the top educational institutions in the world, the University of Oxford. This program features interactive learning from world-renowned instructors, all while surrounded by the incredible atmosphere of this old university city. Across Canada, we offer one-day conferences for leaders in their respective cities. Whether in Vancouver, Winnipeg, or Toronto, you'll make new connections and learn from a roster of expert presenters and leaders. Throughout the year, we offer our peer advisory groups. We curate small groups of entrepreneurs and leaders to meet regularly and discuss business matters in a confidential setting. There are also one-to-one review sessions with the group chair, member trips and site visits, and exclusive guest presenters. For your business, we offer consulting services through ELO Counsel to help you navigate difficult issues so you can thrive as a company. Drawing on extensive experience and knowledge of best practices, we help find solutions that work for you. We invite you to join our network and connect with us. Together, we can be a positive force for change in business and in the world.
Great. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm glad that everyone can join us, and we're looking forward to having Kyle Thompson with us. Today's topic is innovation and entrepreneurship in the rapidly changing media industry. Before we get started, let me cover a number of logistical details. So first of all, the webinars are held every 2 months by the ELO Peer Advisory Group Network. The webinar will go for 30 minutes, and for those of you who'd like to pose questions, please do so in the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. So we'll go 30 minutes for the webinar. The webinar is for peer advisory group members and specially invited guests. At the conclusion of 30 minutes, we'll stop the webinar, and then all of you who are peer advisory group members can click on the link to the meeting, and then we'll have a separate 30-minute session Q&A with Kyle Thompson at that time. Please note that this will be recorded, so you'll be able to refer back to it at a later time, so it's a great reference. I'd now like to introduce Kyle. Kyle, if you can turn on the mic and video, and we'll introduce you and we'll get rolling. Hi, Kyle. Welcome to the webinar.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're not in a prison with the brick wall behind you, are you?
I'm in a Zoom call box, double wide, actually. We put a couple of these in our office so we could have quiet sittings, but I didn't like the blue background, so I threw up some.
Okay, so you're not speaking under compunction or under duress.
No, well, that remains to be seen. We'll see what happens.
Well, we'll see how things go. So I don't know if it's just me, but if you could turn up your volume a bit, I can hear you, but not quite loud, maybe loudly enough. All right, so Kyle Thompson is an entrepreneur and media strategist with over 30 years of experience in faith-based film marketing and production. This industry is, so for all of you who are listening, this is an industry that requires a lot of innovation, nimbleness, constantly adapting to changing technologies. And for any of you, can think back 10, 20, 30 years ago and imagine the different formats in which media has been consumed, and then adapting to that continually is a really interesting entrepreneurial environment. So he has witnessed much innovation and change in the media as the media industry has evolved. He is the founder of Catalyst Resource Group. He has guided campaigns for over 60 theatrical and streaming releases, including Jesus Revolution, I Can Only Imagine, and Hacksaw Ridge, collectively earning over 1.5 billion. That's 1.5 billion US dollars. So that's like about 10. That's about 10 billion Canadian. I mean, that's like real money. So, all right. So we're going to start off with a bunch of questions, and as I mentioned, if you want to pose questions, I'll track that in the Q&A box. So before we get into your background, let's just jump into something that might be very fascinating for people. So maybe talk about what's an interesting film release that you worked on that people would be familiar with, and maybe tell us something we wouldn't know, like whether it's The Passion, whether it's I Can Only Imagine. Just maybe talk about some, project you've been involved in. You go, man, this is a really interesting experience and maybe lesson learned.
Yeah, probably the most interesting. I've had a lot of interesting experiences, as you can imagine, but probably the most potentially damaging for my career, but turned on a dime and actually really worked out well was actually Hacksaw Ridge. You mentioned Hacksaw Ridge, and you know, for your viewers, I would assume everybody's familiar with The Passion of the Christ, Mel Gibson's release in 2004, I think 2003. And so I worked on that film. And then shortly after that, Mel went through basically getting blackballed from the industry and really disappeared from the theatrical world for the better part of 10 years. And then Hacksaw Ridge was this film he came back to the table with that he had done a couple other films, but this was the one that earned him a big 15-minute standing ovation at Cannes Film Festival. And basically he was kind of welcomed back with this film. And so I came on, and most of the films I work with are faith-based films, and so I'm working as a engagement company. That's what Catalyst does, to engage churches primarily for these films. Hacksaw Ridge was a very tough one because it was rated R for violence. If you saw the film, it's extremely violent
Mm,
in the war scenes. And so there was a very little budget that Lionsgate had for the faith-based outreach. And so I was like a lone gun out there that basically see what you can, make happen. And so again, this is way back before, Mel had kind of been officially welcomed back into the Hollywood world. And so one of the first things I started doing is just doing some quick detective work. I'm a grassroots guy, so I'm like, I'm not familiar with the story, and I, just a quick snapshot on it. It's a story of a Medal of Honor winner who didn't carry a gun, and he was a conscientious objector, but he wanted to help, and so he was a medic, but he wouldn't carry a gun. And on one particular invasion in the South Pacific, he saved over 70 people that he saved from the battlefield. So he basically lowered them down through a rope. Great film if you get a chance to see it. True story.
mm,
And in fact, the numbers the way that they did it, they understated what really happened because it was so crazy what he did. And
mm,
so anyway, that's the kind of snapshot of that. So I started doing some, detective work. I'm just trying to find out more about the story, more about the man. When I do grassroots work, I'm a marketer, so I'm trying to find out what are the connection points. So, what are the
mm,
stories behind the story that there might be
mhm,
connection. And I happened to see a This Is Your Life video from way back in like the 50s, and it was Desmond Doss and his wife, and then his little son comes on at the end when they kind of reveal This Is Your Life. And I was like, he has a son. Well, that never came up in any of the notes. There was no conversation. His name was Tommy. And so I started searching. I couldn't find it, but I found a Desmond Doss Jr. Who lived out in Oregon. And I'm just Google searching this back then, and had a phone number and had an email address. And this guy had been in the Coast Guard, and Desmond Doss had been in the Coast Guard, had served in the Navy, and Desmond Doss had served in the Navy. And then I saw
mm,
that that it was Desmond T. Doss, and I was like, well, maybe Tommy's his middle name. Maybe he went by Tommy because he was a junior. So anyway, long story short, I just called this guy out of the blue, get him on the phone, and he's mad. Like when I start telling him, "Hey, are you aware that there's a film that's being?" And I found out he was Desmond Doss's son, and he's angry because he
mm,
didn't know anything about it. And I didn't realize, I kind of stepped into this place where here's a 70-year-old man who's got this hurt from like his early 20s because his dad had remarried, and basically that family had kind of forced a disassociation because
mm,
his mother had passed away, and really broke off his relationship with his dad, and totally
mm,
just completely fragmented him away from the family. Hadn't seen any
mm,
of his family in basically 45 years,
mm,
and had moved away just to be, just to be away from everything that hurt him, basically. So
Mhm.
end up on this what ended up being a 2-hour phone call, which really turned into a counseling session. But
Mm.
my hope and promise to him was, listen, Mel Gibson would love to meet you. I didn't know if Mel would meet him. I didn't know. I didn't have that kind of power, but and I'm blanking on the character that played his dad, but well known, Andrew Garfield. Said Andrew Garfield, he would, I mean, just to be able to have a connection with your father, like, it would be wonderful for them, and my goal is to get you on the red carpet to meet,
Mm.
to meet Andrew Garfield. And I would love to have you at some of these screenings, because, and nothing
Mm.
that you would ever have to do, you just stand and wave and people will love on you because they love your, when they see this movie, they're going to love your father. And what turned into, like, very, like, this guy was so angry when I called because of, and again, because of all this prior hurt. And by the end of the call, he was crying and thanking me, and because I'm expressing things to him that I really
Mm.
have no power to, but I felt like I needed to.
Mm.
And then I reached out to Lionsgate and I was like, "Hey, just so you know, this happened." And I would like, they were like, "You're fired. There's no way." Like, he wasn't supposed to be contacted, like all this stuff. And I'm like,
Mm.
"Listen, like, none of this was in the show notes. None of this was. If you knew that this was a problem, if you knew, and it was, and there were a lot of reasons why the not the Lionsgate team, but another team basically had not wanted him to be contacted. But I
Mhm.
said, I told them very clearly, if I had not done this, if I could find this guy in 20 minutes on the internet, the Daily Mail is going to find him.
Mhm.
Some other reporter who doesn't like Mel Gibson, because Mel at this time is still blackballed. And so if he does something, there are reporters, they're going to look to make him look bad.
Mhm.
And I said, I probably saved you guys on this film. So if you want to fire me, that's great. And I hung up and I was like, I don't even know if I'm on the project anymore. Um, and sure enough, like within 2 weeks of them announcing the movie was coming out and the trailer, someone found him from the Daily Mail,
Right.
called him, did an interview with him, and everything he said was he was so grateful that the movie was being made, that he knew that Mel's heart, like, he's saying stuff I told to him, but like, it was this effusive,
Mm.
praise for the story that would have been the total opposite if I hadn't have called and talked to this guy. And it was a beautiful thing, because what ended up happening is he got on the red carpet. Andrew Garfield hugged him in tears, thanking him for his father. The Lionsgate ended up paying to fly him to many red carpets at the Medal of Honor Museum and other World War II exhibits,
Mm.
and other screenings around the nation.
Mm.
And people loved on him because they wanted to love his father, and say loved on him.
Mm.
And here's this guy that had been totally disassociated from his family. I was able to find a cousin of his, got him on a international interview, and on the interview, she handed the blue ribbon that was from the
Mm.
Medal of Honor
Mm.
pin, which he had nothing from his father. That was the thing. He said, I don't even have a pair of his socks. I had nothing from my dad because
Mm.
of the split that had happened in the family. And so
Yeah.
that was given to him, on air. And he ended up spending the next summer, or the next actually 8 months, driving through the East Coast, reconnecting family. It
Mm.
was one of these beautiful things that the world will never know about it, but the value of, these stories are so important because they affect people's lives, but there are lives that are being affected kind of in the
Well,
middle of it when we work on it.
yeah, no, that's great about the power of media and story and connections. So you mentioned a couple of times. So everybody listening on this webinar will be familiar with the Passion of the Christ, and even though it's a number of years ago, maybe just recount a few things about the film. And you mentioned Mel Gibson being blackballed from the community. So it's just interesting. So maybe, because we've got a Christian audience. So when just describe, like, why, because people may not remember, was the film
Yeah.
controversial, or what was the problem? Why was, so what if you make a Christian film, you're challenging the hierarchy, so you're tossed, or like how, like what happened?
Yeah, it was a combination of a number of things. One, with the passion, really put the Pharisees and the Jewish Sadducees and Sanhedrin in a bad light. And obviously there's a lot of sensitivity in the Jewish community for centuries, obviously, that they killed Christ, something that has been an ongoing, derogatory thing said about them. And so So there was a lot of blowback within the Anti-Defamation League and others, just how how he showed Jews in the film. But then afterward, he got arrested. He was drunk, got pulled over, and had a bit of a manic outburst, talking about the Jews in Hollywood, and just all sorts of just going off basically. And it was recorded, and then it was released by an ex-girlfriend, or I think it was a conversation, maybe he was leaving. There were a number of just bad PR things that happened on top of it that basically proved, oh, he must hate Jews, and here's the proof why. And so it became, like, you can't hate Jews and do well in Hollywood. There was a big slap back against him, and he just was blackballed. That was it. And so it was a
Mhm.
combination of kind of some of that feel within the movie
Mhm.
itself.
Mhm.
And then there was, and then him coming back basically to the fold, so to speak, was Robert Downey Jr. is a great video online if you ever get a chance to see it, where Robert Downey Jr. has him come out and actually present for his like Lifetime Achievement Award or some award, and he asked the world to forgive um
Mhm.
Mel. And it's a really beautiful scene because he kind of tells what Mel did to save his life,
Right.
and like in turn he's kind of doing the same thing. So that happened
Yeah.
just prior to the Hacksaw
Yeah.
release.
Well, that's interesting. So I want to make sure in the next 12 minutes that we get in a few key points about innovation. So maybe just discuss, because this would be like an hour-long answer, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
when we think over the last 10, 20, 30 years, the manner in which technology has changed and the continual evolution of platforms in which media content is delivered, I think for people listening in the conversation, like, how do you stay alive in that environment? How do you continue to innovate? Because it just seems that for all of us, we have to keep innovating and be nimble and have our, ears attuned to what's going on. But in your world, I mean, it's like innovation on steroids. So
Yeah.
how do you navigate that? And what are some of the lessons that you've learned that you could share with people?
Well, there are things outside of my purview that are in this industry, and that's on the production side. I've done production, but not at the level of, yeah, I'm a minor producer on some films. But in terms of actually shooting, directing, that kind of thing, that's not my world. But I'm in the midst of it. And AI obviously is a massive change agent for everything in this industry. And it's happening at a scale that is probably more than any other outside of maybe HR and legal, because the cost of production is so massive. And to be able to create, if you watch a show that we're working on, House of David is in season 2 right now on Amazon Prime, and you see these massive battle scenes that used to cost, you know, millions of dollars for a real legitimate wide battle scene with thousands of people, like, so hard to do, so expensive. And now AI can accomplish it in minutes, basically, theoretically months, but at a fraction of the cost. And so I think, in just the answer is, um you can't be scared of the technology of anything, and AI is one of those things that can be very scary, and be willing to embrace it, but not lose sight of the purpose, because at the end of the day, the tools only make what you do better or worse. They accentuate it. They don't create the opportunity. They don't create the creativity. They are simply the tools that will only accentuate what you do well or what you don't do well. And so
Mhm.
when you're embracing those type of tools and in innovating, you have to keep focused on what there is a tried and true, like profit and loss. You cannot keep spending money and expect to make money. You've got to have you can't take constant losses without having a really clear revenue stream back. And so all these things, they don't change just because the tools get more cool and sexy. They just accentuate it, and actually get you to failure faster or get you to success faster. That's
Right.
really the innovation side of it.
Yeah. Well, one question related to that is often when there's turbulence and change, it's actually an opportunity for entrepreneurial people
Yeah.
because, going back to Joseph Schumpeter and this notion of creative destruction, when, things are tried and true, you can't get in there. But if there's all this destruction going on in the industry, so just comment on this idea that are there actually more entrepreneurial opportunities? So maybe people who aren't as well financed
Hmm.
can get in, or let's say you can do streaming, or like, so it's the fragmentation of media, and you can have direct
Hmm.
access via social media and all these things. So you're not the old system where there was I guess a certain number of movie houses who controlled the key actors and ran the
Hmm.
place. Whereas, would you say, have there never been greater opportunities for entrepreneurs
Yeah,
in this
for
field?
sure. Yeah, for sure. The first thing that really changed Hollywood was the cost of production, where anybody with a decent camera could start creating their own content. And back when I first was getting started, we had our little ministry that we had a $250,000 film camera that we had. The only reason we got it is because we knew somebody at Columbia Pictures who said, "Well, we've got a chat for 3 of these. We only need 2 of them. We'll give it to our friends over here who never would have even been in the line." And it's just the ticket to say, "Yes, now you can spend $250,000 for this camera." And then the film that went with it was, $10 a foot. It's like very, very expensive.
Right.
And so, but then, fast forward, and you shoot better quality than what we were shooting on, that camera. You shoot better quality on your iPhone right now. And so that idea, it's kind of the first big wave of is it took away the monolithic strength of studios to create these big, massive productions because they had all the good looking stuff. And now, Joe Blow and with his camera can produce great looking things. Now you fast forward now to the fragmentation of the audience and the ability to reach them with streaming really dusting everything that used to be the
Mhm.
financial backbone, and that was home entertainment. Now you've got a very fragmented audience, and Disney's having a hard time finding enough people. But so it's difficult in terms of getting a bigger audience, but you can find your specific audience. That's where entrepreneurs can go deep into that.
So here's an interesting question. We've got just 7 minutes left on the webinar. So because our audience is a Christian audience, all the people listening would be connected to churches in one form or another. So not to give away my generation or age, but back in the old days, James Dobson came out with, Focus on the Family, came out with this series on parenting. So wow, the church has got this film, the rickety old film, and every Friday for 4 Fridays at the church, we're watching this. So fast forward to today, and I wonder if you can comment on, how do churches evolve and adapt? And say, for us as business people, how do we encourage churches? So should we say, hey, the House of David is, season 2 is coming at your church. We can do a preview and get 500 people in our, we've got the auditoriums, we've got the technology. So how, and of course it's a tricky thing, churches obviously aren't theaters, but what do you see as a role for churches and opportunities?
Yeah, I think so. We're working on a film. If you remember, in 2018, the biggest independent film release was I Can Only Imagine. It was a faith-based film, came out, did 80 some million in the box office in the US, and probably 100 million worldwide, and did very well in Canada. And so we have the sequel coming out February 20th of next year, I Can Only Imagine 2, and it's kind of a continuation of the story, and incredible story. So the thing that churches do well is they do events well. They're again, churches aren't monolithic. They're very modular. They have men's ministry, women's ministry, kids ministry, youth, etc. And so what we find, and so I Can Only Imagine is a good example about it. This is be a great film for your parent, like your families that want to go see a movie together. It's a great father and son film. So your
Mhm.
men's ministry, and so this is where we would encourage a church to, buy out a theater. Really easy to buy out theaters now because they're a lot smaller in terms of
Mhm.
number of tickets.
Mhm.
And they're, it's not atypical to have a 60 or 90 seat theater, and so you can get 60 to 90 people with a father and son pretty easily. Probably need one or two, 2 or 3, theater houses to do that. But you can show the movie, or you can host the movie at the theater, but you can also at a later date. The movies are available now. It's easy to stream into the church and have a movie night at your church. The other things that we have, you mentioned like James Dobson and Focus on the Family. We're working with them on a film that's coming up. Um, and we're going to be developing a teaching series that goes along with it, and it's got video from the movie itself with the teaching that's part of it. Now it's specifically for kids ministry, but those type of things, it's so easy now to basically get all those pieces, and then in the fragmentation of it, reach the groups that are most likely to want to be a part of that
Okay.
movie.
So I have a maybe a somewhat comical question, but for most of us in the Christian community, when we hear about traditionally, when you hear about Christian film, you go, "Oh, we know it's going to be bad. It's just a question of how bad." It's almost like there's mainstream stuff, and we go to the theater, we realize what the quality is there, and then you go Christian stuff, second rate. But I'm a believer, so I guess I just have to put up with mediocrity in the name of faith, so to speak. But of course, that's all not to say it was ever that way, but that's sort of the perception. But these days, would you say things have changed where there, for whatever reason, like maybe you can explain why, there seems to be like a lot of really good faith-based content, and you have to imagine money's going into it. I mean, obviously these things cost money. So maybe just describe why that's changed, and in your estimation, has it changed, and why?
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy. Money speaks volumes. So, like House of David, it was House of David season one was a Amazon Prime release through Wonder Project. Wonder Project is a new values based studio. Was underwritten by $100 million of investment. Those investors aren't doing it out of the goodness of their heart. Some of them are,
Right.
but they want to see a return, and they say, hey, John Irwin, who started and founded that, was the director on, I Can Only Imagine. He was the director on Jesus Revolution. He was a director on American Underdog, the story about
Kurt Warner.
St.
Yeah.
Louis Rams, Kurt
Yeah.
Warner. Yeah. And so he's proven it. This is worthy of a risk. You look at, Sound of Freedom. Angels released the Sound of Freedom doing 200 million worldwide. Suddenly Hollywood's like, whoa, there are Christians who want to see movies. They say this every time. Like when The Passion came out, it was like 600 million worldwide. It was like, oh wow, people want to see things about Jesus. That's so odd. And so Fox created Fox Faith, and Amazon Sony created Affirm, and you had all these kind of spin-offs, and they kind of ebbed and flowed because they were built internally without Christians,
Mhm.
and so they didn't do really well. But yeah, basically, if you do things well, you earn the right to do things better. And I think that's the simple business model that we all understand. And when you are able to do it better and more people say, I like that, they'll give you money in exchange for the things that you're creating. And that's where we're at now, where you have some fabulous films that are coming to theaters, and even ones that, are streaming. House of David is streaming. You won't see it in a theater, but Chosen. I mean, The Chosen is now in theaters as well as streaming on Amazon, and now season 5 is free on their own app. So that is because The Chosen is the most watched and most translated show in world history. Like, there are a lot of people that like this stuff, and so yeah, that's why we've arrived at this time where things are really this good.
Well, it's a good reminder, and maybe that's a good, because we're at time now, but maybe just if you can add one exclamation mark that, the role, maybe just talk about this to wrap up, like the role of excellence. I mean, what you're saying, basically, excellence will attract resources to do more of what you're doing. So maybe just talk about maybe how you pursued excellence, and then we'll wrap on that point.
Yeah, I think in terms of what we do, we're working with the films to find the audience. That's really our focus. Is how do we get the film? How do we find the audience? How do we make that connection?
Mhm.
And so for us, we're constantly having to update, like, we got to find everything we can, the connection points for that film. And the other thing too is, we don't say yes to everything. We say no to a lot of films, because we have a trust that we have built with our clients, or with our customers. So we get hired by studios. They're our clients, but our customers are pastors. We serve the local church. And so we
Mhm.
have built a trust that we're not going to bring them a film that they're going to go, oh, that's not very good. When they hear from me, I want them going, oh, Kyle, oh yeah, he's got great stuff. He's got films that we love. He's got the newest things. He's got the best stuff that's out there. And so that trust is really where we're constantly staying focused, which means you say no more than you say yes.
Yeah, well, that's great. All right, so that concludes the webinar. And so for all of you who are peer advisory group members, we'll head over to the meeting and we'll have a bit of a roundtable with Kyle. And so I'll conclude the webinar now. So for all of you joining us in the meeting, go to the invite that was sent to you and click on the link for the meeting. So thanks for your participation to the guests, and we'll see you in a minute over in the meeting room. Okay, thanks.